Hello everyone, it's me Clayton. I just finished watching Season 2 of Dota Dragon's Blood. So after the first 8 episode season, left our characters in many different areas and ultimately left a lot of things in shambles, this season happens to reassemble a lot of things, bring in some new faces, and it happens to set up a lot of things for what could be a really explosive third and final season. Let's get to the story, shall we? The story initially follows Davion as he is captured by his fellow countrymen, and as they try to figure out what's with the demon that's inside of him, or should I say, what's with the dragon that's inside of him. Yep, Davion still has to deal with Slyrak in his body, while the princess he was helping and her handmaid Marcy also end up in different areas as they end up helping Luna and her fellow elves throughout the first part of the season. But when said Princess Mirana ends up being brought back to her own kingdom, we figure out what's been going on there, we meet a new hero in Lena the Slayer, and we happen to find out more about Terrorblade's plans and how he's connected to Silumene and the Invoker. But that's all I'll say about the story here. This season is about as long as the first, and the animation, for the most part, is on the same level. There are a few still images in certain scenes that don't necessarily need a lot of animation, but the animation is absolutely at its best during the action scenes, which should be expected from Studio Mir at this point. And honestly, as far as the story goes, I actually think it's about on the same level as the first season, perhaps actually a little bit better, mainly because there are so many good betrayals, so many great new characters, and you get the sense that the people who wrote this clearly have a lot of love for the Dota world as a whole, created by Valve. I really liked seeing a lot of the new characters and how they fought. There's this big pangolin man who gets to help out Luna at various points in the story. There's this ice dragon who's able to transform into a human who is able to read and write and go through a lot of poems. And even the new villains this season have a lot of cool aspects to them, even if some of their powers do kind of remind me of Vatu from Legend of Korra Season 2, which is not a good thing, I should say. But it's also interesting to learn more about characters like the Invoker and Silumene, and it's also nice to learn about Mirana's backstory finally, considering that's one of the big loose ends that the first season had that I wanted answered, and I'm satisfied with the answers I got. Especially since we get to have a few great moments from Marcy, too, who's still the best character of the show. On top of that, I really appreciate how the CGI is really only used when it has to be used. You know, similar to how CGI is really only used in the latest seasons of Attack on Titan for, like, the Titans and the stuff that are the hardest to animate. Same thing here when it comes to the CGI being used for the dragons. And the CG actually isn't that bad. It's actually preferable to a lot of CG that I see in a lot of animated shows. And I can understand why they do it, since the dragons are some of the hardest creatures to animate. On top of that, there's a lot of funny quips, and even though some of the foul language is still a bit out of place, it's about on the same level of humor and out-of-place nature as it is in, like, Castlevania and such, to the point where it happens occasionally, but it still has enough clever writing to use it in a way that I find rather amusing. It is said that Netflix has been doing really well with these video game adaptations with Castlevania and Arcane, but I think Dota Dragon's Blood is kind of up there with one of the good ones. Not one of the best, but for those who are looking to get into Dota, I do think it's a good show to go for. So I'll give it the same rating that I gave the first season, an 8 out of 10. See you next time.